And for more, let's cross to the Canadian capital. Genevieve Tellier is professor at the School of Political Studies at the University of Ottawa. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So we knew Mark Carney on this side of the Atlantic because we remember him as the, even though he was Canadian, as the governor of the Bank of England, having to navigate during Brexit. Didn't expect him to see him pop up as the new Prime Minister of Canada. Were you?
Yes, because his name was going around for a few months, I would even say years. So we knew he had some acquaintances with the Liberal Party, the party of Justin Trudeau. He was also a former governor of the Bank of Canada, and he weathered the financial turmoil of 2008-09. And afterward, when he left that position and went to England, he came back to Canada, and we saw seeing his interest on politics. And so it was a matter of time before he stepped into the political arena. Now to go and make that huge jump from a banker to a prime minister, this is something we were perhaps not expecting. We were talking about being elected first as a MP, a member of parliament, but that is a huge promotion, I would say, and to see him there on this post today.
What are the reactions to that? First first prime minister who's never held an elected office before.
Yes, we're kind of intrigued. And so we had some other figures that entered politics quite late, did not have a lot of experience in politics. Brian Mulroney was like that, our former prime minister. Stephen Harper also did not have a lot of experience in politics. But yes, for Mark Carney, that's kind of different. It is well accepted, I would say, because we are in very special times. And so because of what's happening with the Americans, we think that many Canadians think that perhaps we don't need a seasoned politician, but more a seasoned banker or someone that knows the financial and the economic market. And that could be the advantage for Mark Carney. But for this special time, normally, I would guess that Canadians would be a bit more skeptical and don't really like to see outsider maybe labeled as coming from the elite sector of society to enter politics. But this time it's kind of different because of the context that is also different.
Yeah, because when Donald Trump had his first incarnation as U.S. president, leaders to his tariff threats reacted diplomatically, and eventually it kind of died down for the most part. This time, as we heard in that report, very offensive language from Carney, from Justin Trudeau. What's changed?
Well, the second presidency of Donald Trump is so different from the first. And so Canada was not really the target the first time. The first time it was Mexico that was the target. And we were a sort of collateral in that sense, treated by the US. But this time, and we don't really know why, we are the first and main targets. And the menace is very serious. And
you don't know why?
We don't know why. There is this fentanyl story. There's our fentanyl crossing the border. We know it's not really true. It's only 1% of the consumption in the US that comes from Canada. But this is kind of a pretext. And we don't really know why then. And Canadians are very, very angry. This is what is different from the first time. In your clip that you show, we heard Liberals booing when Carney was talking about Donald Trump. This is happening all the time across the country, each time that Donald Trump, his name is mentioned. And so there is kind of this unanimity of Canadians concerned, wondering why there is this treaty. We're supposed to be the best partner on the planet. And we don't understand why that's happening and what we could do to reverse that. And that uncertainty is really the big issue here.
So Genevieve Tellier, you don't know why, but I'll bet you have a theory.
As good as many other theories, I think it's a persona that wants to bring chaos and disturbance just to see if that could help his position. I'm not sure he's thinking quite about the long-term effect of of his decision. In the first term, he was able to get out of that, not in so bad shape, but I'm not sure it will be the same thing that time, because what he's doing to his own country will also have huge negative economic implication impacts, and so we'll see about that. But I think that contrary to the first mandate, he doesn't have a team that could tell him maybe what he doesn't want to hear. And so this chamber, this sober chamber that was supposed to advise him and to tell him, well, yes, Mr. President, or no, Mr. President, then this is not a good idea. We don't see that anymore. And I think that gives him the margin of maneuver to do whatever he wants.
To do whatever he wants. Now, we don't know whether or not this is for the long haul or not, these tariffs. But can the same be asked in the other direction? We've heard the Premier of Ontario, a Conservative, slapping 25% tariffs on the export of electricity to certain U.S. states. Is there an element of bluff in that too?
Not really, because there was a pause last week with the tariff on the automobile sector. And so the Canadian could have said, okay, we will pause also our own tariff, and nobody did that. In fact, I think that Canadians do support a stronger stance, and most Canadians would say, okay, we have started to impose some tariff. There's another phase that should come eventually, and we want that to continue, because we don't want to be in this state of negotiation during 4 more years. It's going to be awful for our own economy, this uncertainty. And I think that Canadians in general want a stronger stance and show to the American that they need us. And if they are taking unilateral decision, there will be some consequences about that. So you have Donald Trump on one side that says one thing and then back down. But in Canada, it's kind of the contrary. We have put in place measures, and we stick with those, and we want to go through them until all tariffs are lifted from Canadian goods.
And as you said, there's sort of a national unity on this issue in Canada. And since there's going to be a general election later this year, you're not going to hear anybody softening their tone between now and then. Mark Carney, he's from Western Canada. That's also a bit unusual for the Liberal Party. Does that help his chances come the fall, or there's a lot of time to go and we don't know who's going to win?
It helps him, but I'm not sure it helps him because he comes from Western Canada. I think that this renewed nationalism, patriotism that we see in Canada, we see it all across the country, which usually we don't see it too much in 2 places, Quebec and Alberta. And even in those 2 provinces, there is a resurgence of nationalism that we see. And so because of that, and because Mark Carney have lived in many places in the country and also abroad, he have this overview of unity in Canada, and that could help. But I think it starts from the base, from the grassroots, where everybody, even in Alberta, are showing signs of, okay, we are proud Canadians and we want to be united. And more we hear Canadians that usually would support the other party, the Conservative Party, now saying, well, you know, Mark Carney may be the guy that reunites us all, and maybe we should vote for him.
Genevieve Tellier, you know you're speaking to France 24, so I have to ask you, how's Mark Carney's French?
Well, it's not bad. It could be better. We see that for his many years in Britain, probably did not have the opportunity to speak French a lot. That being said, I think he learned French in good schools before that. And so it's probably just a matter of practice. In fact, in the last few weeks, he have improved his French, so he's a bit more fluent. So I don't really have many concern about that. That being said, we may have an election even next week. And so during electoral debates, will he be able to impose himself in French debates? We have good debaters in the opposition party. That could be an issue. But I think at the same time, Canadian overall, even French-speaking Canadian, will understand the circumstances, will understand that maybe he did not have time, a lot of time to practice. And so that may be the main issue. Although for some Canadians, maybe it's kind of an irritant, but probably no more than that.
All right, Genevieve Tellier, so many thanks for being with us from Ottawa.
My pleasure.